Before we jump into today's episode, we have got some business to take care of. We've got to thank No Soap Patches for being a sponsor of the podcast for these last few months. They've just been so supportive of everything I'm doing here at Tearing It Up. I couldn't thank them enough. And I mean, it just goes hand in hand. Tearing it up, No Soap Patches, patch the world. Flare up your gear, repair it. Remember, these patches are so fun. They're not just for repairing. Just add some flair, some personality, add your personality to whatever it is, a hat, backpack, a plain old black jacket. Go check them out, and you can save 15% when you use code FLARIN'ITUP at nosopatches.com. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Tearing It Up. Today we have Debbie Milne from Supra Bars. This is, we're going to dip back definitely into some cycling talk. So for those of you who, missed that, welcome back. For those of you who aren't super into the cycling world, do not tune away because we are talking more beyond just cycling. And this one again, I've got to stop saying this, but I can't. I'm excited because we're going to go into the topic of nutrition a bit. And as a lifelong athlete and active person, it is something very important to me, but I also struggle with it. It is my biggest struggle. The getting active, the getting out and all that isn't the problem for me, but it is staying on top of my nutrition, fueling my body correctly. And so I think for a lot of us out there, a lot of you listeners who are active, this will be a very great and interesting conversation for you guys to just kind of peel some layers away, especially as, a lot of our audience in this age group of women where weird shit's going on all the time, right? And you don't know who the culprit is, what the culprit is, and sometimes just tuning it back to the basics of movement and nutrition can be super helpful. And that's something that I'm personally trying to put a major focus on right now, this month in particular. So we're going to dive into a few things as we learn about Debbie and what Supra Bars is about, and hopefully learn some stuff from her along the way too.
Yeah.
So as we start here, Debbie, I love to ask everyone first off is where you are at in the world as we record today.
I'm in Greenville, South Carolina. It's a cycling hotbed, so I love it. Foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. It's like a dream. It's like heaven to me.
Oh, I love that. I've heard so much as we've been really talking to a lot of people in the cycling world here on the podcast in the last couple of years, especially the last year. There are a lot of folks from the East, North Carolina, South Carolina, Arkansas, all these places that I haven't been to explore, but I just hear
Mhm.
so much good things about the cycling out there. And actually, I think it is, I'm going to probably get this wrong, but Outdoor Media Summit, I believe, is going to be in North Carolina next year, and that usually happens in the fall. I've been going the last few years, so as of now, I plan to attend, and that's just the one thing on my radar that will hopefully get me there, unless something pops up kind of sporadically or randomly that I can make it to. But as of now, that's the thing in the future that I see, okay, I can get out there, and I got to figure out how to bike there. I don't know. I don't think I'll be able to bring one there like I've done in the past, but yeah,
Yeah.
I do want to check out that area so much. So did you grow up in that area?
I did not. I was, been a lot of places. I was born in Ohio. I got my education in Mississippi. I lived in Birmingham, Alabama for a while, back to Mississippi. But as a kid, when we visited the mountains, the very first time I saw them, it was just like I left part of my heart there. So a job came up when I went back to work full time, and it was here in like this at the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. It was, it just felt like a home. Home is always home with your family, but just like a home on earth, I guess you could say. I was so comfortable here. It feels like I was meant to be here.
I love that.
Yeah.
I've talked about that a few times, being in Tahoe now and having been here over a decade, but being from the Pacific Northwest where all my family still is, I very much feel like I have, two homes. My heart is
Totally.
100% in two places. And I think that, is a wonderful thing to be able to have an experience, like, feeling that in more than one
Mhm,
place,
mhm,
and that feeling like you just mentioned where you go somewhere and you're like, "Wow, I belong here," and it could just be for a
mhm.
short stint in your life, right? Or it could end up where you end up, like, where you settle for a longer term, and that's what I
Mhm.
think is so important about people getting out and traveling and around, and, like, a lot of our audience is in a age range where they may have done all that before, I feel like I'm kinda done with my traveling and things, and I am settled
Yeah,
here in Tahoe, but there's
yeah,
also a lot of women out there who maybe didn't get that opportunity to do earlier in
mm,
their life for whatever reason, and, this podcast is really about encouraging people at any age or stage of life to continue to do new things and try new things that may not be moving across the country, but
mhm.
or finding a new
Yes,
home, but it
yeah.
could be.
Yeah, you don't know what you might be missing. There's nothing what is that saying, like, "Thrive where you're planted," or something like that, great. And that's true, but when you do travel, there could be another place that just hits you like that.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
see even in Greenville, people will come to do an event. Maybe it's like the Grand Fondo, the Hincapie Grand Fondo, and a lot of people end up moving here, just because they stay long enough, to see the mountains. It's pretty much in my like, to me, limitless road, routes you can choose, which isn't always the case in some beautiful places, like the roads might not be safe. So, yeah, I think traveling had I not traveled so much with racing, I used to think Bend, Oregon was gonna
Oh.
be like the yeah, I did, I was like, "Ah, how could," and I really, really thought that until I'd never been in the Blue Ridge Mountain area. I'd been in the Tennessee mountains and Georgia mountains, but something about it just seemed like, just home.
Mhm.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's always good to encourage young women to travel around and, just, that you may have to not be close to family, but, still, the connections can be a lot closer now than probably hundreds of years ago where that might have been, a long-term separation. Now we can visit,
Mhm.
and be at home in a different place and come back to the other place that we, you know, really hits in our heart, so, yeah, yeah, so you're in,
Absolutely.
Lake Tahoe? 'Cause I've been
Yeah.
there once. Yeah, it's
Yes.
beautiful.
Yeah, and, like you kind of touched on I the roads around here really aren't the safest, like, in the
Mm.
actual Tahoe area because there's not really bike lanes in a lot of
Yeah.
the places, so it can definitely be a little, scary on that end, especially for someone who maybe isn't, like, very well versed in road cycling, on
Mhm.
top of, just the terrain or weather and all that obvious
Mhm.
stuff that there is it can be a squeeze on some of these roads for sure, so
Yeah.
I'm not much of a I can't even say not much of. I am not a road cyclist, so,
Yay. Yeah.
and I mean, I think it is I love biking, and I think that anyone biking, cycling, like, I understand the love for it, but, I do get a little scared on the road. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, this is why I like
Mhm.
being on, like, gravel roads or mountain bike because there's just less it's the other people that you worry about. It's the drivers, the
Oh,
cars, the things, to worry about, like, it's always the other people, not yourself, but, yeah, it's,
mm, definitely.
yeah, yeah.
If I
Well,
had
to
not been doing it for so long and found a place that's safe, but I'm a very like, I'm defensive writer, and
Mhm.
that's not to say you can do everything right and someone blows it for you,
Yep.
So it's always a risk. The only way to reduce all the risk, is basically not right on the road, and I'm not ready to do that yet.
Yes.
But I get it when people say, "I just, gravel, I can as much as I can control, it's gonna be my own mistake, if I get hurt," a lot of times, or maybe somebody beside you, but yeah, I actually started out on my mountain bike, so I did love that. We used to ride at night, like, with lights on the trails, which I would not do now, like, I wouldn't do now. Yeah, because when I think about us ripping through the woods, at night with lights on, it was, a recipe for getting hurt probably.
Well,
But yeah,
ignorance is bliss. Not that you're being
yeah.
ignorant, but, like, more so, like, comparing that to being young and just, like,
Yes,
not
yes.
thinking about those consequences because maybe they haven't happened, maybe you haven't gotten, like, really hurt yet, so you're just kinda like,
Exactly.
"Oh,
Yeah.
whatever," you really feel a little more invincible when you're younger
Mhm.
because you heal faster. Maybe
Yeah.
it doesn't prevent you from, like, working or paying the bills or something, right? So,
Exactly.
it's a little bit of a
Yeah.
different mentality, um,
Mhm.
when you're young, teenage, 20s, all that, like, really, I think until your 30s, maybe for most people that you start to like,
Yeah.
"Oh, wait a second, like, I'm thinking a little bit more of these consequences."
Yeah. It's a good thing,
Yeah.
yeah, it is, and I do measure, like, what I do now based on the fact that, yeah, I've gotta go to work.
Mhm.
I was in a crash, in Athens Twilight. I still call it that. They have different sponsors every year, but it's Athens. But it wasn't my fault, but those things happen, but, yeah, I carried that injury with me. It's soft tissue injury.
Mm.
It's probably a labral tear. I can't get an MRI. That's a kind of a long story. But anyway, it kind of did impact a little bit of my business, and then just being because I'm in bar production. I do it. I'm small batch. I'm hands on. I have my own little facility where I've got a routine set up. So yeah, it makes me think about now from this year to come. Like I'm thinking about it just because of that. That one experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it
So.
can it's a bummer, really, like, that we do kinda start thinking that way, it just sometimes you're like, "Gosh, I wish I could be a little more carefree," but, such is life, and you have to
Mhm. Mm.
find that and kinda
Yeah.
that balance, right? We're always talking about
Yeah.
balance and something of how can like, evaluate the risks and make smart choices, but also know that obviously you can't prevent everything, okay? Because like, what are you gonna
Yeah.
do? Like, literally besides stay in your home and do nothing. It's like none of us are here to do
Exactly.
that. So, like,
Yeah.
we just have to
Well,
sometimes think about, like, "Okay, maybe I can do it, but maybe right the timing, maybe just not right now. Maybe not that race or maybe not
oh,
that trail. Let me
exactly.
get
Yeah.
through this whatever thing."
Mhm.
But, so speaking of, you just kinda mentioned that you are small batch, you're doing, like, everything with the bars. Tell us
Mhm.
a little bit about before we dive super deep into kinda your background and how Supra Bars came about, for people who we've kinda glossed this over, like, don't know, what is Supra Bars? We've
Okay.
alluded that it's nutrition, but let's clear it up for people.
Well, yeah, you're right. So Super Bars, it's portable nutrition bar. Its official like full name would be Super Functional Food Bars. When I first created them, I was very interested in functional food. It's a perspective about food that has more to do than just like the macronutrient qualities that any particular food brings, like just carbs, fat, protein, or even vitamins and minerals. Some of those basic things that we've always grown to hear about foods. Get your vitamins and minerals, get carbs, you need fat, you need protein. But a functional food perspective is like, what are the other components within your choice of those things that carry other health benefits? Like some foods help lower blood pressure, or some foods, in the case of super bars, they're geared to help support gut health. So, Super Bars is a functional food nutrition bar, and I made it when I was in my graduate studies, postgraduate, I guess, for a master's degree in health promotion. So I was taking more courses in nutrition, and I was in a biochemistry of micronutrients graduate level class. And because I was with undergraduate students, the professor spent more time with me, just to qualify for graduate credit. So I got to focus on something, and it was gut health. And he had done a lot of research on what you might call now nutraceuticals, just different components of food that you can use to actually, it's like kind of like food is medicine, if you will. So I started looking at the nutrients that help good bacteria. Not just good bacteria, not like probiotics, right? Because you have plenty of marketing on probiotics like
Mhm.
yogurt, kimchi, kombucha. We need probiotics. But another really important part of gut health is to actually feed those microbes, the ones that are beneficial, because you've got a ton of microbes in your gut, different types, viruses, bacteria, yeast, different things. And the beneficial bacteria that do good things for you and for your health fiber is like their jet fuel. So if you want to have a healthy gut, one thing you need to see in your diet is a lot of fiber. So Supra Bars was a bar I created for myself when I was doing so much training. And I began to realize, I'm eating a lot of sugar and I know I need to do that to go fast. I'm a carb person. I'm not against carbs. So I just tried to say, how can I temper that with, like just some of the waffle, nutrition bars they have out there, or even, like Cliff Bar or
Mhm.
Power Bar, they had carbs and, they had some good qualities to them, but for me, not enough. So I started putting together everything that I could think of that would be good for the gut. So I was looking at soluble fiber, omega-3 fats, polyphenols, oats, and certainly I, wanted to feed the better bacteria, and those were the key components for me. So every bar, flavor of my bar was built on that base,
Wow.
to support gut health with my choice of the macronutrients that I put in it. So that's
Wow.
basically super bars. Super means to go beyond. So my hope was to go beyond just simple sports nutrition, but actually have those things be carriers for other, kind of investing in my health, and investing in my gut health and not just my performance.
I love the meaning there, what you said, like, it means to go beyond, so it's, Supra, Supra, just for anyone out there listening who may have not caught that in the pronunciation, and
Yeah.
what a good just, like, I don't know, I can imagine being in a race or competition or something, right, and when you're eating that, like, that is the messaging you want to give yourself, right, to go beyond, to keep going, to press further, what a
Yeah.
I didn't know that before about the name. And so you were developing this as you were racing and things. Were you have you been, like, a lifelong athlete? Has this been something that has been part of your life for a long time? Because obviously you were in school. Was
Mhm.
that for to become a dietitian?
Yeah, and I can easily get wordy on this, so I'll try to summarize that. Yeah, I have been an athlete my whole life. Even, my dad was, everything was a race. Not to win, but just, just to race.
Yeah. Yeah,
Everything
just
was a
the
competition.
friendly competition kind of thing, you
Yeah, it was
know?
just
Yeah.
like the first one, to that, the first one to that, so we always played games, always active, and it was quite natural that, like, his philosophy was like, "Well, why not? Why can't you do it?" So I played a lot of sports. I did a lot of things. Basketball, cross country, track. I was a football cheerleader. I rode horses, different things.
Wow.
But my bike was a vehicle. If you can believe it, I've ridden most of my life, but I did not know that people race bikes until I was in college in Mississippi at the time, so it just never I just never was exposed to it. So my bike was a vehicle, yeah, my bike was a vehicle up until college. I would ride it to class, and I that's where I saw just 2 other people that were riding bikes besides people, like, actually, like, from Asia where everybody rides bikes, in Europe or something.
Mhm. Yeah.
So then I found out that people race mountain bikes, and so I started racing then. It is a kind of a long story, but, I wasn't going to study nutrition at that time. I was, accepted early entry to vet school, so all of those sports I did, they're team sports, so, they kinda just, one by one, the season ended, and I began to end all of these sports, so I still have my bike, so, anyway, I was gonna go to vet school. I was accepted, but I kinda had a little personal breakdown at that time, and this is the topic that could take a long time, but I did. I had an eating disorder, so I started,
Wow.
it was really struggling, and me being I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know what that would mean or what it would look like, and I felt like that was a vulnerable position to be in. So I decided I would maybe, when I got out of the vet med program, I sticked in the sciences like that, biological sciences, and decided nutrition might be my answer.
Wow.
And now anybody with an eating disorder will know there's more to that than just
Right, the
knowing about food.
psychological part,
Yeah,
but, I
yeah.
mean, that is even that in itself is something that not a lot of people can do or recognize. I'm sure many people, like, a
Mhm.
lot of disorders, when you're in it and you've realized that it's a problem, but you don't know
Yeah.
how to get out of it and ask for help, I think that's actually kind of
Mhm.
incredible that that thought came to you, like, "Well, if I just learn more about nutrition, maybe this can help," because a lot of
Yeah.
people just don't know. Because again, it can be everyone handles these things so different and it hits them different, and
Mhm,
but
mhm.
that the mental aspect of it, like, that might not be the thing that carries you out of it, but that to me,
Mhm.
like, to have the wherewithal, like, to understand, like, learning more about nutrition could help me is amazing that
Yeah.
you found that.
Yeah, I that's me at whatever, 18 or 19, I thought I really did want help, when I realized that I wasn't in control anymore, and I'm not a therapist, so I'm not telling people to self-help themselves, but
Right.
life kinda took me down a path that I actually did. It was actually in my graduate studies, which is, health promotion, a lot about, all aspects of health, what we might call complete health, your physical health, your spiritual health, your vocational health, your emotional health, your mental health, your social health, and those connections where they inevitably have an impact on one another. And that was the case for me. I had some things I had to deal with, and until I did that, I didn't. It wasn't enough just to know about nutrition. But back to the story. Wonderfully, I did go into nutrition. I had no idea that I would end up being a dietitian. That I just did not have that wasn't on my job list when I envisioned going in there, but the food science part was helpful for Supra Bars, and, I will say I got married my last year of college and found out shortly after I was gonna have my first girl, Kate, and she raced with me for a while, like, fast forward way past the life, but I put it on pause. I stopped, and I ended up having 3 kids, and I raised them, and we were raised them like my dad raised me. So we're all doing sports, and I'm still riding bikes. Okay, so I've got I've got them on the back of a it was a steel Raleigh with a Burley trailer and a bike seat, and no one had phones then. I think it was a little safer, on the roads. But I
Mhm.
would pull them around to the park and just take them everywhere on the bike. Just kind of a don't use the car if you can use the bike, and we had fun, and they learned to ride bikes. But it was when in Birmingham, one of the bike shop owners, Barbara Malky, I think her name was, Kaba Cycles, she used to say, "You need to get out and ride with the women, you need to get out and ride with the women." So she loved my kiddos at the time, so she would have this ride called Women on Wheels. So, wow, it was a great ride, and she invited me to come, so when I went, I brought my bike, and I was riding side by side easily with women that were racing bikes. So they're looking at me with my I actually had down tube shifters on this bike and a rack on the back, and they were like, "Geez, you should race. You're strong." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know I was fast." I didn't know that. So eventually, not long after that, I did race, and now you can fast forward a few years. I began to train very hard. Still struggling a bit with the eating problem. It wasn't as profoundly damaging as it had been, but I still hadn't squared away, a good relationship with food. So I wasn't
Mhm.
fueling my body. I was probably ketogenic, wasn't eating a lot. And when I came up for air from that and I started getting true healing with what I was going through, that is when I started caring a lot about nutrition and making sure that I was taking care of my body. And that's when I was also doing some of my studies in, this graduate work for biochemistry of micronutrients that I just became fascinated with food. I just said this today to someone. People are so surprised. They'll say, "Oh, blueberries is a superfood," or something, and I'm like, "No, I mean, almost all foods have wonderful qualities when it's a real food." Like
Yes,
blueberry
yeah.
blueberries have some wonderful qualities, but so do oats, and, oh, gosh, if you think about spinach is good for you, or, you can pick your whole food, and it's like all these little things that you can choose from. You get to choose what you put in your body to invest nutritionally in how you age,
Yeah.
and I'm also a clinical dietitian, and I could say for younger people how you're gonna spend the last half of your life, you know, what that's gonna look like, what your cognitive reserve is, do
Mhm.
you spend the last quarter of your life taking care of health problems, or, you cognition isn't, maybe cognitive decline, dementia. What we're doing now when we're young will catch up to us. And that's when I said, I really need to care about what I'm putting in my body. And I started thinking, gosh, I'm drinking a lot of sugar. I know I need to do that because I want to go fast. I need those quick carbs, but I wanted more than that. I
Mhm.
wanted to feed my gut as well. And, I think I was sick a lot too. I don't think I took good care of my gut health. So I put together I picked dates. They have a lot of nice fiber, good natural sugars and just some other good minerals and just the basic stuff, vitamins and minerals. But the oats I picked because I see a lot of brown rice bars out there, different types of. I'm not against brown rice, but I liked oats more because of the quality of, like, the beta gluten is very good for the gut. I picked the chia and the flaxseed, both of them ground. You can find ground flaxseed, but you don't really find ground chia seed often. But I grind it for my bars because I want to get to everything on the inside. I really do. I don't want it to pass through and miss out on that good stuff on the inside. So all of those seeds are ground. And then, I had sesame seeds. I picked those for, just to have another seed. There were some, I can't even remember why I picked that one. Actually, it would be fun to go back. But I picked, it would be fun to guess, like, why did I pick sesame seeds?
Yeah.
Most of them I can remember, but then I picked the almond butter because at the time I liked the fat profile better, just looking at not so much omega-6. I used to really think about how American diets are getting more omega-6 fat, which is not a bad fat. And there's a lot of controversy about whether that matters or not, but I still think the more you can eat close to the way things um, were before, let's say, people messed with them, is
Mhm.
is your best is your best approach. So that's the reason why I try to have less omega-6 fat in my diet and try to push the other omega-3 or, just the other types of fats that we don't get as much of because our animals aren't eating their natural diet and a lot of different
Right.
reasons. Yeah.
Well, okay, so I'm wondering a bit how I think nutrition in this aspect when it comes to eat like fueling for being active can be super overwhelming to people who are not athletes or trying to be elite or competitive at all or I mean for people who are too, but some of those folks have people to help them, right? To figure out what might
Yes.
work for them. But even so for a recreational person, somebody like me where I'm at now in life and just getting to that stage of life where really realizing how much I mean it's been years that I've realized it, but I mean I'm still there, right? Trying to crack the
Mhm.
code of my own body that feels like it's always changing. Point being is that
Mhm.
it's super overwhelming because of the messaging that we've had, especially like most of the generation listening to this podcast of what's good for you, what's not. Superfoods, right? Like, oh, this is a superfood.
Mhm.
This is not because something
Mhm.
didn't get advertised or marketed, so we don't know that we're not thinking of it as a superfood. But I think the
Oh,
messaging is
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, I think the messaging's a little bit better now, and we've gotten the point we know that our food's been fucked with so much that
Mhm.
is as long as it's in its as close to its natural form, it's gonna be better for us. But there's probably still a lot of
Yes.
people out there who are scared of certain things, scared of carbs, too much fats, this, that, and it can be so hard to find what works for your body, like I'm saying, especially with women who's like, going through a cycle monthly that changes all the time, and just
Mhm.
throughout your years, like, different things are gonna work differently for you at different stages and phases of your life, and that's the one thing that I think I've found most frustrating is the trial and error kind of effect of nutrition. A lot of times, I don't even wanna try, like, to eat something different or,
Mhm.
like, uh, something I haven't tried on a long ride or something because 'cause I've heard horror stories, from endurance
Mhm.
athletes, in their guts of eating too many goos or too much sugar or something like that, so sometimes I'm terrified or I just don't wanna take the time to try
Yes.
this and see if that works, and what am I supposed to do? Keep a journal and write it down? Like, I say that like people don't do that. People do that, right? People do
They
that,
do.
but
They
it's
do.
very
Yeah.
hard for me to stay consistent with those things, and I'm wondering a little bit about your process in how you found that these are the things that you wanted to include to eventually kind of make your own, nutrition bar. What was that trial and error process, especially because at this point, you've already said you had 3 kids before you got back into or started racing at all. So
Yes.
that's gotta be even more intense of trying to juggle the family life, working, and
Mhm.
figuring this all out.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, with the I worked, oh gosh, I would I would train when I knew no one needed me. So it took a while for I didn't start racing until really racing until my youngest was a little over 2. I guess that was in 2001 or 2. But I it would and by degrees my ability to train increased, because they were still young or I was always active, so
Mhm.
the training I would do would be early, but before, they would get up and have chores or things that they would do. I homeschooled them for a long time. So, once they got in a routine, sometimes I trained a lot of miles on the rollers, I don't know if you know what rollers are. I'm infatuated with them. I'm obsessed with
I've
them.
never tried
I've
them.
had a,
They intimidate me. I mean, I've seen the indoor
yeah.
trainers, but the roller trainers, if you guys haven't
Yeah,
seen
both
that, check
wheels
it
are just
out.
spinning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty my mind likes it because you have to balance when you learn it, even if it seems like I'm not consciously thinking about it, but the part of my brain that needs stuff to do is keeping me on the bike. Like, I don't even think about it. Everything's automated. So for some reason it's almost meditative, to me to be on the rollers versus I instantly I my brain is like just stupid bored when I'm on a stationary trainer,
Yeah.
and if I had to look at a screen and start competing with people on a screen, I was like, "I'm not gonna do that." I always say the only time I really like to compete is when I pin on a number,
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
you yeah, that's the only time, even on group rides, if I'm deciding to go fast, it's just because I want to, and if I don't feel like competing, I won't, but the only time I truly compete is, like, when I pin on a number, and I'm trying to win a placing or money. And now at this age of my life, sometimes I'm competing, like, with myself. That's
Mhm.
kind of a saying. I am looking to be the best version of me because I have a limited time to train now. So I'm never gonna compare myself to people who have way much more time to train, different stage of life, so if I there's more to racing a bike to me than just winning. I used to do it seriously for money, so I took it very seriously. I trained enough. Back to your question, like, during this time, I trained very seriously. I put in the time so that when I went to races, I would know that I wasn't gonna lose money and it would be most likely I would make money. It was like a part-time job to me. So, the rest of the day was with the kids, the same thing, whether it's taking them out and keeping just like my dad did. They did not get to sit in front of the TV. We were doing stuff, parks, libraries, grocery store, Halloween contests, anything but just sitting around, looking at a box, a screen. So the bars, of course, I'm feeding them, and I think that I really made those bars because I knew I needed portable nutrition for me on the bike, and I also became concerned. I've always had gut issues, like a gut that balance. I don't know what it was. You can go back to like I was born naturally, like just not C-section. I was not breastfed by my mom. Back then they didn't do it, but there's these things that build a good gut biome. I did not have a lot of antibiotics when I was young because my parents just, they kind of like, you're okay. We just didn't really go to the doctor
Yeah.
that much. But I did at time yeah, yeah, we just didn't, but I did tend to get strep throat a lot, so I do remember having had antibiotics, but I felt like my gut was off, so that's the reason why when I wanted to make my own food bars and I was studying about gut health and what creates a good gut, barrier and a gut, environment, that is the reason why I started looking at all these different foods that I could that I could choose to put in it. And you know what? It wasn't that hard. It really wasn't. My memory 16 years ago, I can almost see myself in the kitchen just because I cook so much, just having a really good feel about the proportions. When I look at the recipe now, I'm like, when did I write that down? And why did it work? I think that maybe it's the food science in me that I kind of knew, just had that feel like, oh, a little bit of this. But I did not do it with a cost point consideration. I didn't say like, "Oh, I better not put too many chia seeds in or too many walnuts because 'cause they're expensive." Yeah, I literally was very liberal with how I put it together because I was gonna eat it. And I
Yeah.
tell people all the time, it's like there's this real push in marketing for bars, like, "Oh, 4 ingredients or less, or 5 ingredients or less." And I would think like, "Well, why is that a good thing? I've got like 13 incredible ingredients in most of my bars. So why is less better when all of them are, just keep
Real.
throwing things into the kitty of like, this is good for you. This is good for you." Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of put it together that way. And, yeah, I rolled them out. And at that time, I just cut them with a knife, they were for me, I mixed them actually with gloves, like my hands, and I rolled them out, and I just cut 'em, at whatever shape I wanted and put them in a Ziploc bag. And that was Supra Bars. There was not a lot of trial error, I kinda hit it the first time, I wanna say. It was
I
very good,
love
that was the
that.
first one I did. Um and yeah, and the only other version I had at that time was I had one very good that I would put, like, very dark chocolate, like, 80% or 70% dark chocolate, salted dark chocolate, and I would
Oh.
chunk it up and I would kinda roll it, like, over the top. And when I used to like, I'd take him to rides because we had a small little group of people who rode, and I would share my bars, and a lot of them really liked that dark chocolate one. They So that's kinda how Super kinda started because a good friend of mine would buy some, different people would start to buy them, and I wasn't ready to do a business then, but of course I wanted to give it to him, but I was like, "Okay, you can pay me." And so that's what I was kinda doing with them before in 2013, I moved to Greenville to take a full-time job as a dietitian. And again, now at that point, I started, still experimenting with them. Maybe it was just pure curiosity or that same idea that I really wanted to create some very unique bars. So I took the Berry Good and I became infatuated with beet juice and ergonomic impact of using, nitrates in the beets. So I started actually juicing beets and reducing those and adding some natural like organic cane sugar and making a beet syrup so that I could kind of have a beet bar, because I couldn't figure out like how can I didn't even think of beet powder. I was like, "Oh, I need beet syrup." And I actually those were very good. I did not get to continue doing that because in the, many years later when I did decide to become a business, I found out that I couldn't get the water activity right on the syrup, so I had to switch to what I currently am using with the beet powder. But the same thing for turmeric. I did a lot of read a lot of research papers on turmeric. This was 2010 when I was learning about it. And it was not what everybody, at least not in my area that people were talking about, and certainly not in the media. So I kept telling all of anyone I cared about, "Hey, this turmeric is awesome. Like, you should see all the different applications of how it can benefit this, and that." And I was reading some of the research that it might help with, muscle soreness during exercise, besides the anti-inflammatory, antiviral, just antibacterial properties of it. And so I really wanted to have a turmeric bar, and that one was tough because I didn't wanna do a savory bar,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I mean, that was popular for a while, maybe there's still some out there, just kinda like the savory bar, but I didn't wanna do that. It just didn't seem like that, I didn't want reflux or, I didn't know, it just didn't
Mhm.
seem right. So that's why I thought, "How can I make it sweet?" I've never seen anybody do turmeric sweet at that time.
Yeah.
So I came up with sweet turmeric, and I thought, "How can I take away from, just convince this turmeric to fit right in with fruits and such." So I picked coconut. I thought, you think of curry, right? Coconut.
Yep.
So I picked coconut, and because coconut caprylic acid in the coconut is, I was reading studies that said it might help control the growth of yeast in your gut, and so
Oh.
I was like, oh, that's perfect, coconut. And then I picked the blueberries in that are wild. I'm strict about sticking to the wild blueberries. They're a very expensive ingredient, but when they're not cultivated, when they're wild, they tend to have a much higher polyphenolic activity, a higher concentration of this polyphenol that those are, actually very good for gut bacteria. So I put the blueberries with it, and then the mango just seemed like you know, just the opposite, color, another high color, beta, just vitamin A. It just seemed like a good match. And surprisingly, I think with that one, I did have to play with the ratio some, but once again, I look at the recipe and I can't remember the day that I looked at it and said, "Yeah, that's pretty good." I just can't remember that day.
I love it. Well, I have
But it was
tried.
set in stone. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry. We got just a little delay there, but, I've tried all 3,
Yeah,
and
I
I've
saw that. Yeah.
honestly been, I think I have 1 left maybe, and, like, this has been a while, but I have been, like, trying to really hold that out for the time that I, like, really, really need it, because I don't do a lot of long endurance activity things, so I mean, it's gone in and out of my bag because 'cause I'm like, "No, no, no, I don't wanna, like I don't wanna use it, I wanna really." And that's because I'm trying to, again,
Mhm.
test things myself of, like, I want to make sure I have some really good nutrition with me and compare it to, like, okay, in the same spot having a Cliff Bar, like,
Mhm.
what do I feel here? I want to be able to feel those differences, so it's been my own kinda test of, which obviously, like, well, just I should order more and then I can then I can test it out, but
Oh, yeah.
just
Well,
some weird mindset thing that I
I
always have,
should
like, "No,
send you
save this."
some. You should have
Well, you
told me.
did, but but yeah, this
Yeah.
morning or this
Yeah.
afternoon, actually, I was coaching wrestling, and I was starving, and I had a scratch bar, like, in my backpack from the other day, but I was like, "Damn it, I wish I would've brought the Supra Bar today just because I knew I was gonna be
Mhm.
talking to you." But they are so tasty,
Yes.
and I know that no matter what, when you're doing these activities, especially if you are someone who's doing them often, racing or competing or something, you'll get tired of stuff, right? You'll be like, "Okay, I do not want
Mm.
another this, that."
Mhm.
I mean, it could just be plain sugar if you're an ultra
Absolutely.
athlete, ultra
Mhm.
marathoner or something, you're like, "I no, give me a piece of cheese or a burrito or something, give me the salt." Like, I do not want another piece of
Exactly.
sugar or something. So, eventually, in those
Yes.
situations, those things will you won't have a taste for everything, but you just know you have to eat, right? You're forcing some food down you, but at least you can know
Mhm.
that you are having something that supports your gut biome and is helping you
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And with all these ingredients, like what you mentioned about the blueberries and being wild and sticking to that, I'm so glad you mentioned that because
Mhm.
we've had Heather Kelly of Heather's Choice on the podcast a couple times, and she's up in Alaska and she makes like backpacking
Mhm.
food, so dehydrated food, and then packers these little cookies. But one, and she was on Shark Tank, and one of the biggest things that they were trying to tell her was to do it cheaper. And she was like, "No, this is like one
Yeah.
of my core values is to what the reason I
Mhm.
started this was for good nutrition, to like really fuel my body with good
Mhm.
food." So no, I'm not willing to use, like, cheaper ingredients to give this to makes my margins bigger. That is not the point of what I'm doing.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that can just be really hard for a lot of business owners in so many different ways when you get to that point of trying to grow, right? And you have you're at the point of looking for investors or some kind of capital, and they're trying to tell you to cut something, to do it different, to again, just to make those margins, and holding to your values can be really hard because again,
Yeah.
you're just trying to make some money. Not you and like in general, that's what the people are doing, or that's what, like, investors wanna see is that year-over-year growth, and so how are you gonna do that? You're gonna cut your costs somewhere, and with consumer packaged
Mhm.
goods, that cost is gonna come from something that comes into your body, right? When we talk about apparel and things like that, of course,
Yes.
the topic of sustainability is, should be high
Mhm.
priority for everybody, so you get into that, like, "No, I don't wanna use cheaper material because it's not good for anyone or the planet or whatnot." And I think those conversations again are
Yeah.
happening more
Yeah.
and more often. But when it comes to food, I mean, that's literally going in your
Mhm.
body and ingesting it. And we already are just have majority a bad diet for whatever, because that's what's available. That's what's available for people,
Mhm. Mhm.
whether it's accessibility, like due to finances or just where you're at or life is
Mhm.
busy. Um, so I
Mhm.
just feel like when you can, you got to eat the best you can. And when you find people like you who are, and Heather, like using real good ingredients, like you got to hold on to that. And I know that you talked about how going on group rides and sharing these bars, and eventually people are like, yeah, I want to pay. And when did it click for you that you were gonna take this to the point of packaging it and selling it? Because it sounds like you still are
Well,
doing that yourself.
Yeah, and this is the part, I was working full time as a dietitian at the time, and, after I moved to Greenville in 2013, I was still making the bars for myself, and some people, they'd say, "Oh, those are good. Yeah, I'd love to buy some. Will you make me some?" But then people started telling others about them. Same It's kind of the story of the food, packaged food, businesses. It's I mean, I think it's a good story because, maybe there's someone out there that says, "I'm gonna put together a bar to make money, and so I'm gonna think about price point and hot marketing, key terms, like whether it's a keto bar, or you could pick it." But some of the better, I would say, with more integrity, bars that are coming out are people that were really trying to build some good nutrition for themselves and shared it with others. And that's the reason why I think we can be so stubborn on saying, "No, I don't want to change this. People like it. I'd like to make some money, but not to that extent. I mean, look what
Mhm.
happens to our food supply when money is the priority. It's not good. So, I decided, okay, that was probably in 2017, uh, 16, I started thinking about, well, what would it take to be a business and sell it? And even having come out of food science, I had not studied food science since my undergraduate degree, so it wasn't fresh in my mind. But I had a lot to learn when I did that. There's a FD label, label compliance, and a and document with just tons of information that if I pulled any bar off of it'll have the allergy information. Yes, it'll have the nutrition information, but the font size or where the address goes, it's really, really, really specific. And none of the bar companies really comply with that. But when I was trying to get my label passed, for some reason, South Carolina was just, the Department of Ag was going to make sure I had that label, just like, well, even though I'd say, well, what about Cliff Bar? It didn't matter. So it was a little bit of an uphill journey just to like get a label that would pass, through getting a RVC, like a retail verification certificate. So that process, once I decided to do it, it was just one step after the next. Oh, okay. I First thing I did was I went to the South Carolina business development with Clemson, and had a really good mentor at that time. So with a lot of help, she connected me with individuals that would help me go down that path. So I was able to get the product tested, make some adjustments. We created a label with our very first very rustic packaging was food safe packages that we ordered, and we would hand put a sticker on it. Because I
Wow.
wasn't making
Yeah.
that much, right?
Right.
And I had to find a kitchen to rent because you could not like make them in your home, right? You can make it in your own personal kitchen. So we would do that share kitchen space with other, entrepreneurs. We'd rent and pick a slot and go in there and make the bars. Had a hand sealer that was not as good as the one we have now, but it just literally had an arm that would seal them, and we'd have the gloves on. But the Department of Ag comes in and they to have a look at what you're doing, and they decide if it's a safe manufacturing practices, and you have to have a Serve Safe certificate where you take food safety class, which I was very familiar with as a dietitian. Because we work in the kitchen, like in hospitals and such, so that wasn't a problem to do all of that. The biggest problem was, um, trying to get that label, where I could hit go on sending it off to the the company that was gonna print all these labels. But I have a beautiful thing. I think as a company, we really said, "Hey, we are finished and a good product and ready to go," was in 2021. So 2018-ish, let's say 17, we're playing around learning, have a very rustic beginner looking label. And then somewhere around the COVID era, I think it was around 2020, a local branding company, a really good branding company, the brand leader, Kyle was a cyclist. I think he lived in Colorado for a while and had moved to Greenville. And so he was on a bike and someone gave him one of my bars. and he reached out to me about rebranding for free, like, as a project, because they
Wow.
did not have a nutrition bar, yeah, in their portfolio, and they actually went on after that to help rebrand Power Bar after they've won some awards for my package design that they designed, and of course, we looked at several, and that's the one that we liked. But they did that for free so that we could be a part of their portfolio. So I say late 2021 by the time we had them that darn label approved and got them shipped to us. I considered us maybe roughly around 2022 to say, "Hey, we're competitive."
Wow.
So we're about 3 years into it, if that makes sense, like,
Yeah,
legitly
well,
saying, "Let's make this work."
exactly, and that's why I love to hear the backstories too, just to remind people out there, like, most often, this doesn't happen
Mm,
overnight, right? You've been in your kitchen since
mm-mm,
2001, 3, like, making your own things and then packaging them, and then before you actually, like, really went to market with how you are now, like, a very long time and process. Um, but also it
mhm,
depends on what your
mhm,
goals are, right? What that goal, as you touched on,
mhm,
wasn't just to create a bar to make money. This came from your own personal needs, and then you learned that other people want it and
mhm,
need it, and you were able to figure out a way to get it out there to the people. And speaking of getting it out there to the
mhm.
people, are you in, stores, or do people only find you online? How would people be able to taste a Supra bar? How would they get it?
How are they? Well, because we are still, I consider a small batch company, we do direct to consumer, is one way, and I always like to shout out my investor, I'm not sure if he and his wife want me to say their name out loud, but wonderful couple that have come in behind Supra to help us, keep going during these difficult times when you're trying to decide how to make a bigger jump.
Mhm,
But, we direct to consumer, I thought would be my preferable, audience, if you will, because all bars are made like when you order online, they've been made probably within a week. They're
oh, wow.
very fresh. I keep all the ingredients refrigerated, and they don't have to be refrigerated when you get them, but I'm all about fresh, and I'd say 70% of the ingredients are organic, but I'm not ready to switch the label yet. But that was my goal. But I found out though, that vendor-wise, locally, that was a good outlet as well because there's distribution centers now, like the Fuel Goods or the Feed or something
Mhm,
where
yeah.
people just they kinda like to go online and just order the things they want. I mean, a lot of bike shops don't even carry a lot of nutrition because they know people are just ordering online. But then I found that bars have a place in some really cool places like coffee shops and,
Mhm,
because they are literally they are not I'd say they're not really sports nutrition, but they work in that place, for the right kind of activity, like hiking, beautiful match. If you're not doing something that's very jostling on the stomach, like running, running that could sit heavy, they could. Some people can tolerate that. I have a customer that eats him an hour before he runs, and he has no problem. But yeah, so the people can, if you live locally, there's a lot of local shops that sell them. I have a few out of town. Out of town vendors can be difficult, because I can't get in there to give samples. And a lot of time, I've talked to a lot of marketing people at this point because I'm ready to take some big jumps. That's where I'm at, and they say like if your product isn't validated and people don't know it yet. They might be interested, but they're not maybe yet willing to spend the money to try a bar, that they're not sure that they're gonna like, or
yeah.
and especially if they don't think they need it.
Mhm,
So that's the big thing, like, if people want to try them, though, and not make a big commitment, we have a 3-bar box now, and that's kinda why I brought up my investor. We were thinking of, like, how can we give people the chance to try the bars without a 12-bar commitment, without a 12-bar commitment, so he wonderfully, we came up with that, and we do have a 3-bar box option so that people can, invest a little bit less to find out what I believe they're gonna find is they're absolutely delicious. They make wonderful portable nutrition. It's a mini meal, actually. It's very balanced. It's got it's sometimes I'd say as a dietitian, it's got more fiber in that bar than some people have in most of their day, that I
Yes.
see in my office and as a clinical dietitian. Maybe not athletes, because they tend to have this healthy, perspective. They exercise, they whatever, they sleep, they don't drink too much, they eat healthy food. But the average, just average American that's a non-active person does not get a lot of fiber. So to them, like, this is a perfect mini meal. It's not too many carbs. It's got a really good balance of healthy fat, which a lot of people don't understand. Fat isn't just some arbitrary thing we burn for energy.
Right.
Essential fats, yeah, you probably know this. We need essential fats for good hormonal balance, and essential fats going to help us, make cellular walls, good communicative cellular walls, and help fight inflammation. And omega-3 fats are beneficial to our better gut bacteria. I've read some research articles where they're thinking maybe we should call it kind of like a prebiotic. So a lot of people don't know that about fat. So I packed all that in one bar. It's like a perfect little mini meal, just a little bit short on protein. Because
Yes.
a good, I mean, if you know anything about women, as even I think our protein requirements have been estimated to be a little lower, and I think then, based on the studies they used at that time. So people are now really focused on protein. That's like the big topic in protein bars. But for this, like, oh, you know what? If you're not a vegan, you could have an egg with it. You could pair some, plant based, more nuts with it, I suppose, or another like a good like if you had a protein drink like soy, and there's one I used to like called spirulina, but like a little protein shake in the bar, it'd be a perfect mini meal.
Oh,
You can order them online, or if you're if you live in the Greenville area, then, there's several shops in town that, that you could buy them due south, Swamp Rabbit. I'm pretty sure maybe some of your listeners are in this area, but, basically, the bulk of them would go to superbars.com or Fuel Goods. Fuel Goods.
okay.
If you've not heard of Fuel Goods, they're a women-owned business, 2 ex-professional women cyclists, and they are based in Asheville, North Carolina, and they have a super, um, amazing story about how their business has just really taken off in the past, several years. But super bars are available there too, where you can actually buy just 1 bar, if you
Oh,
want to.
wow. I've heard of
Yeah.
Fuel Goods, and I, feel, like, almost embarrassed to say that I didn't know that it was women-owned. So, I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna go check them out even further." And I don't know,
Yeah.
like, do they do the boxes? Like, the runner box? Is that who does
Yeah,
that?
they do that. They started out doing the runner box and the rider box.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So that's where I heard
Um,
from it, and I don't know,
and
maybe it was just because
that's them.
yeah, maybe I had only thought of them as, like, the runner box, and I know they've grown and evolved from that, but, I will definitely check them out and link them too for the people who might wanna get one. I love the 3 box sample's a great way to try all of them. And all these things that you've touched on,
Mhm.
like, kinda going back a little bit to the ingredients thing and how we get the messaging of 4 ingredients, that's it, blah, 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 which I think, that marketing comes from the fact of we're used to looking at a nutrition label and seeing a long laundry list of things, but it being like hydraulic whatever,
Yeah.
blah, 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 some kind of scientific word, like, and a bunch of those, right? But when you have 12
Yeah.
ingredients, but it's all real
Uh-huh.
food, so the rule of thumb with looking at the nutrition labels isn't necessarily how many ingredients, but it's can you pronounce the name? From what I learned,
Yes.
it
Yes.
was like, okay, it
Mhm.
doesn't matter if there's 12, 13, 20. If I can pronounce them all, I know what they are, then that's okay. But if it's
Mm.
12 things that I have no idea what the fuck it is or why there's xanthan gum and everything or something, like whatever that that's maybe not so great. So I think it's like I said, I do feel that there's so much more information out there and for women specifically too, where we are turning the page on some of these old narratives like no carbs, no fats, and um
Mhm. Mhm.
we know carbs are okay. We want carbs again, especially if we're being active, but like I said, a lot of times people don't think they need that this wouldn't be for them. As you also touched on, it's not necessarily a sport bar. This can be a mini meal. You can pair it with a protein shake or something else. I am a firm believer one protein company out there that I do really like, So I don't really wanna call them out, but they have, like, a protein powder that they say is a meal replacement, but I'm like, "Well, 1 serving that you're supposed to use is, like,
Mm.
200 some calories. That's not a meal replacement." So I love that you're saying mini meal, like, let's be
Mhm.
specific. A meal is not
Yeah,
260 calories, so it's okay for you to
exactly.
have this bar that's loaded with good stuff, but pair it with something else. The thing that you were also transparent about that it has less of protein. Like, you add a little protein with your bar, and
Yeah.
there's your on the go easy thing. You're not trying to be it all in one thing, but again, also reminding people that you don't have to be a competitive athlete to get the benefits from this. We're all on the go and busy, so having something that you can count on and
Mhm.
rely on that's gonna actually give you good things for your gut and body, it can come in a package, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm very we don't have preservatives. Citric acid is just like vitamin C, and there's not really anything in there that anyone couldn't pronounce, but all the rest are just whole food ingredients. I literally, measure and weigh them. I mix let's call it the moist ingredients together and the dry ingredients together, and I have this huge, Hobart mixer that this arm goes around and blends them. It's just there I never get tired of seeing how beautiful all those ingredients look. When you mix it up together and it's a bar and it gets hidden behind, a package, you just you could just see like, "Oh my gosh, this is just like a bunch of really, really good food." And it is like important for people to know that like if you don't fuel your body, for women, I mean that's very, your there's you have basic needs just for your basal metabolic rate,
Mhm.
which a lot of people don't even meet. And if you don't meet those, then you run into some physiological consequences. And it's a whole nother topic, but just like a lot of people can be that are physically active, women, they can be relatively underfed and,
Mhm.
have some symptoms that are pretty, I think that's a really hot topic right now. Some of the women Peloton are coming out and talking about like, for example, not having a period, for a very
Yeah,
long
but
time. For
reds, right, is that has become a huge
thank you.
topic. What is it?
Mhm,
Relative energy deficiency? What
mhm.
is it?
Deficiency in sport.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So you're not necessarily having a eating disorder, so to speak, but you're underfed.
Mhm.
And that you can look like actually your weight you can't pin someone like, "Oh, they're really thin." Sometimes it's someone who looks like a normal weight, and they still can be underfed
Mhm.
and have physiological consequences. Just like poor sleep and, depression, and it can impact your, your menstrual cycle. A lot of, sometimes you can run a very low heart rate, bradycardia, and they'll think, "Oh, I'm just an athlete. I've got a low heart rate," or fluctuations in maintaining blood pressure. It's just a lot of cluster of symptoms that affects a lot of systems in your body. And besides just, the impact on you being able to perform at your best for the time you put into a sport, um, performance, should never take priority over your health. I'm just a firm believer that even in a very acute situation, like within the course of a month, I just question whether it's worth it to compromise your health for the sake of, performance. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic. Like I say, just, you should eat well, my friend, because you're investing you're investing nutritionally in your health outcome, and you can feel so much better. You're just gonna
Yes.
feel so much better, if you're well fed. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
And
that's kind of like coming from someone that's had an eating disorder. And, that's, I'm 100% like life is just like, there's no more clouds in the sky, when you're not afraid of food and you're intentionally thinking about what are the choices I'm going to make today, sure, I'm going to have fun stuff. I'll have a donut every once in a while, but I'm thinking like my body can only function at its best if I give it the tools it needs. And that's kind of what was, really behind Supra Bars, not making money. Yeah.
yeah,
And
and
I'm
it
gonna stick
doesn't
to that too. I don't think I wanna change a lot about it.
I love that,
Mhm.
and I was gonna ask you I was gonna say I'm gonna probably put you on the spot and ask you a question here that I didn't prepare you for, but I don't think I need to because I love what you just said, right there at, like, "Don't be afraid of food, my friend," because we are so often still like I said, I
Mhm,
do think the narrative's changing a lot, but I do still think that it can be a fear of people, but you can absolutely not be losing weight and be underfed and underfueled, and that is something that it's been kind of like a cycle for me of trying to figure out, like, I know I'm not dropping the pounds, but it's also because my body's holding on because I'm not fueling right, and so it's yeah, just this, I'm in a space right now of pulling back from some high intensity stuff, focusing like, main focus on my nutrition because I'm not recovering, I don't have the energy, and I know
yeah.
I was also not eating well
Mm,
at that
yeah,
same time, so trying to get back into, like, noticing these things and really paying attention to fueling my body right now because I feel like I got away with a lot of stuff for a long time, and now I'm not, and
mm,
I'm really noticing it, and I just don't have the
mhm,
time to not feel good, you know? I don't want to. I wanna do the things I love and enjoy. I wanna just make it through the day without being exhausted, and I'm not saying all that is just based on nutrition, but I know personally for me that it does
mhm,
play a big role,
mhm,
and obviously I'm doing other things behind the scenes to figure things out, but that is one thing I know I can put my focus on, and I think that, yes, we absolutely don't be afraid of food, of the carbs, of the fat. There's a lot to learn for
mhm,
everyone's personal self and what is gonna
mhm,
work for them, and I
mhm,
just think to, you holding to your guns on, you're not out there to make the big
and then
bucks and sell out, you're there to provide people with good, healthy options that keep them going, so I appreciate
mhm,
that and what you're doing, and to have a good I can feel good, like I said, about eating something packaged because sometimes you do feel like, "Well, I'm just eating" obviously, we wanna eat as fresh and real food as possible, but there are the options out there that are better for you than others.
yeah. Yeah, I usually tell people just so they don't fear like food. If you could think of, have an analogy that I think of like when at Christmas you put together puzzles with all the little pieces, right? And it's going to have this scene. Let's pretend that's like a picture of good health. Um, if you were to take maybe 20% of those pieces out, just random places throughout it, you would still see a picture like of good health. Like our bodies are amazing. They can take a few hits,
Yeah.
but if every single piece of that puzzle, if you were to take out, let's say, 60% of that where that's not high quality food, just like real solid food, you're not going to be able to get like that picture of good health. But 20% here and there random choices isn't going to change the bulk of mostly just saying like I'm very intentional when I have a donut. I that used to be something that was very difficult for me. It is not anymore. And I would encourage anybody that does not have like if there's any food fear at all, like to you could work with a dietitian. And I spoke about this before. Like dietitians are trained for a much greater length of time than just a nutritionist. And we can
Mhm.
recognize like just when we see that people are in a poor relationship with food, or maybe the focus is like it's too black or white, that is taken so much bandwidth in their head that also takes away some enjoyment with life. So, like with dietitian, some specialize in eating disorders, like with the relationship with food. And as a dietitian, I have to know enough about that not to send someone down that path.
Right.
I do, but I also know the numbers, and I can say, if you can take your focus off your weight, for example, and you give your body what you need, and you get a better relationship with food that's not restrictive or punitive, then you start making intentional decisions about, yes, I'm going to fit in that fun food. Even though it's not a very righteous food, but I connect with people through it. Maybe it's a birthday party and it's a birthday
Mhm.
cake or something like that. But I am going to intentionally eat in a way that invests in my health, and all of that works. As far as worrying about weight, like if you're following a good eating pattern and you're giving your body what you need, and if you're riding your bike for a long time and I like as a dietitian, I'd sit down and I'd ask you how much you're exercising. And I would break down how many carbs you need. And I would say, like, let's figure out how you can get those at the right time. at the right time. Not don't eat the whole ride so you can have a huge meal afterwards. That's not a great relationship with food, right? Because you deprived your body what it needed to get you
Yeah.
through that whole activity. And that's a process. And I'm going to tell you, I know it's hard for some people to switch to that and just trust the weight their body settles into. But it's like it'll end up being a self-love because you will have this really balanced relationship with food. You'll be physically active, you'll feel good, and you appreciate your body more for that, for how wherever it settles there versus where you think it should be. That is too
Yes.
costly, that it's
Yeah.
a place you may never be able to get to. Yeah.
I love
Yeah. So,
the puzzle
anyway, well, good for you
analogy.
to be stepping back and thinking about it. Oh,
Yes.
you do? You like that?
Yeah, I love the puzzle
Yeah.
analogy, because to me that just puts a picture in my head, right, that really makes it connect of, like, how 20% versus 60% and yeah, putting that together, I think that can be very helpful for a lot of people to realize, like, we're not out here trying to be perfect. Again, a mission of the podcast is, like, is that we're not out here trying to be perfect and follow a certain path. It's gonna be messy, you're gonna find your way through things, and it will take some, like, trial or
Yeah.
error, or sometimes it might be, you're up here, sometimes you're down here, a lot of times you're just, like, mostly floating that middle, and that's okay. You can
Mhm.
it's, again, a wor some kind of balance, but, that and what you just said too of if you're feeling good, you're fueling, you're exercising,
Yeah.
and you find your rhythm and kind of flow, that will, like, kind of inherently, ideally anyways, like, create that self-love where you will be, like, you'll be able to appreciate your body because you have that energy, maybe you're gaining that
Yeah.
strength or that endurance or something, so how could you, eh, hate your body? I mean, I know you can, but, like, it'll give you more appreciation for it and hopefully take off some of that aesthetic feeling, and when you know that you're doing all the right things and you're feeling good, so why the heck would it matter if I look a certain way if what I'm doing, is working, and that is also, again, a
Mhm.
very
Mhm.
generational thing that I think a lot of us have to work on, and we still get the messaging and whatnot, but I know that I have felt when I am energized and fueled and feeling strong, I feel way better in my body than when I don't, and that's where I hit that wall of, like, "Okay, my body's not feeling good, I'm not feeling strong, I'm feeling weak, I'm
Mhm.
not feeling energized, so something is off here, and I need to figure out what it is and put that back together," because it's not just like, "I need to lose 20 pounds and everything will be fine." It's not that
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is another thing I'll tell people is to exercise in the way we do. Like if you're doing a 3 or 4 hour, it could be a mountain bike ride, or it could be a road ride, or even hiking. That's essentially you're putting your body under, like, humans usually historically would have tried to conserve energy, and at those high level, intense levels, it's a state of acute metabolic stress, and we honestly, if we don't eat ahead of need, we continue to ask our body to work using energy systems that don't have the right substrates, like glucose is your pay dirt when you're glycolytic, like the very higher heart rates, it can be very detrimental. You begin to use more protein than you otherwise would. But the thing is, your body isn't going to tell you that at hour one when you should be taking in the carbs, whether you feel like you need it or not. And that's the intentional part where I think that self love where you go again, it's uncomfortable because you gotta say, "I'm gonna focus on what my body needs versus how it looks," you know? And so when you're willing to do that and you keep affirming that, day after day, then, no one can really touch you. Like if they say something, eventually it's just like it just hits you and bounces back. Take that from someone who knows, like and I that's why I never comment, if someone's losing weight or gaining weight, I do not comment on anybody's body. Even if I
Mhm.
think, "Oh, they look healthier," I just don't. I don't
Yes.
talk about body size. Yep,
I've
at
been
all.
trying
And
really
I
hard
think no one
conscious.
should.
Yes, yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I've been also like, trying very consciously to not do that and or to word things differently of, like, "You look very strong," or something, but still
Yeah,
not even
yeah.
at all, right? But, like, finding a way especially if it's somebody that and like, maybe they've been working hard at something, right? Instead of saying, "Oh, wow, you look good, you've lost weight," but like, "Wow,
Mhm.
I can tell, like, you're looking strong." Maybe that's just
Yeah.
not aesthetically, but you see them in the gym or on a ride and they're going faster or whatever, like, but I think that unless you know the person very, very well, then just not commenting
Yes.
at all is the best route.
Yeah.
And well, Debbie, I
Yeah.
mean, this has been a really great conversation, and I think I could go on and on with you, especially as it comes to
Yes.
just nutrition and athletics and activity. I mean, I'd love to talk
Mhm.
to you again for sure about maybe some more specific like nutrition topics or something, giving some people
Sure.
some
Yeah.
tips or whatnot. Um, but
Mhm.
I know that in this we definitely hit some good nuggets and hopefully have gotten into people's brains out there to, not shy
Right.
away from a label that has a lot of things, but maybe just like look to exactly what that is, right? And for some of
Mhm.
these bars, especially like Supra bars, you don't have to be doing a long high intense endurance like activity to use this as fuel for your body. It is just portable fuel that is great to
Right.
have for anyone out there who's on the go like I am every day from here to there
Mhm.
and I need something sometimes quick to grab. Um so
Mhm.
just again creating that accessibility of good food out there. Thank you for doing
Yeah. Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Before we get
Yep.
out of here, I just want to make sure the people can find you. The best way to get a hold of you or Super Bars and find them. Just let people know like where that might be.
Okay, but so we have of course, we have a website, suprabars.com, Supra, Supra bars.com. And our email is suprabars@gmail.com. And if for any questions or inquiries, I love answering questions about the bars. I do get emails about them, people trying to learn more, before they decide to purchase. So it's one of my favorite things to do is to talk to people about how passionate I am about the bars. And you're right, they you can use them for sports fuel, but they are whole food nutrition, like portable nutrition. So they fit active lifestyles or just taking a snack, like a midday snack at work. They're just they're not specifically sports nutrition. So thank
Love
you
it.
for pointing that out. Because a lot of people think they're just for cyclists, and they're like, nah, they're for anybody, that loves to move their body or just needs a quick, easy mini meal, to build on. Yeah.
It's a
So,
lot
oh,
better
and
than
one more place where you can try super
yeah.
bars. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, one more place is Fuel Goods. In case you're not ready to buy 3 bars yet and you don't wanna buy a box of 12 yet, you can go to Fuel Goods, and they have a retail store, and you can find the Super Bars there and select one and put it in your cart and give Super Bars a try.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, much better than the gas station stop on a road trip or something and getting chips and a Snickers or something like that too. So I always like to have some good things
Yeah.
on hand. Like I said, when you're like, oh my God, I feel like I have no other option, right? Um, but like I said,
Yeah.
so much good information in here, and I'd love to 100% dive deeper about some specific kind of nutrition topics. I think a lot of our
Yeah.
listeners out there too who are active and trying to either maybe break habits or create new habits or whatever it is might find some useful stuff here and to break any fear of food that might be there and if you don't have
Mhm.
that fear to just continue down a path that could be more specific to fueling your body better. So again, thank you so much for joining me, Debbie.
Yeah.
Everybody definitely go check out Supra
Eh,
Bars, check out the sample box, or go to Fuel Goods to buy the one, and keep that good nutrition handy on you.
Yes. Thank you, Taryn, for having me on your podcast. I'm absolutely, just had a wonderful time just chatting all things bikes, nutrition, exercise. I loved it.
Cool.
Thank you so much.